Hello, welcome to Planet America's Fireside Chat. I'm John Barron.
I'm Chaz the Chidello.
Funny thing happened in Nashville, Tennessee just a few hours ago, Chaz. A relatively traditional political debate took place between President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Maybe it was the mute button, which was only used quite sparingly. Maybe it was the debate moderator, Kristen Welker of NBC. Or maybe it was a realisation that President Trump turned the first debate into such an absolute car crash that damaged his re-election hopes in the process. But look, there was some real substance today.
There was. Most people did notice that Trump sometimes helped Biden in the first debate by hyper-aggressively interrupting all the time. And the advice he was given was hang back and let Joe Biden hang himself. Well, as you say, Trump hanged back. Now, I thought Joe Biden was generally pretty solid, to be honest, but he did give Trump one or two moments I think Trump could use going forward. We'll come to that in a second.
Yeah, we'll see. The enough rope strategy, I don't think Joe Biden managed to hang himself, but yeah, you're right, a couple of things to look at. Donald Trump certainly seems to have gone into this debate with two principal objectives: don't look like a crazy person and try and hammer this new line of attack that Joe Biden is a corrupt career politician who will do nothing, except for all the bad stuff that he's done in his 47 years. He'll still do nothing. His attacks on Joe Biden, which are, of course, largely attacks on Joe Biden's son Hunter, have escalated in recent days as Trump's team looks to try and find some kind of smoking gun in Hunter Biden's business dealings around the world when his father was VP or after when his father was VP as a private citizen. So it's a bit illogical in the sense that some of this is just people doing business, which I thought Republicans were in favour of, but there you go. In many ways, this looked like a familiar playbook as well. Instead of Crooked Hillary, it's now Crooked Joe.
You were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years, go look at them, 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world.
He's a corrupt politician. Right. So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
That's exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This is
told.
where he's going. The laptop is Russia, Russia.
Okay, now that bit towards the end there about the 50 people who said this is not true, they've ruled it out. That's not true what Joe Biden said. I don't have the quote in front of me. What those 50 people said is this bears all the hallmarks of Russian tactics.
Yes, yeah. An influence or interference campaign, but not necessarily a disinformation.
Exactly.
It could be true.
It could be the emails could be true.
Right.
They specifically said they do not know whether the emails are true. So for Biden to say, they proved it was all clear and this is all made up, that is not true.
Yeah, and look, we'll talk a bit more about some of the concerns around sort of interference a little bit later, but on the Hunter Biden stuff, which we covered quite a bit on Planet America on Wednesday night, there is still this issue of we're not sure that there is anything there. There is smoke, no fire, and no smoking gun. We have yet to see what allegation of impropriety, what quid pro quo you're suggesting. It seems as though essentially we've got Joe Biden being accused of doing what Donald Trump is doing quite comfortably and in plain view, doing business either using his family to do business or doing business himself, possibly from office.
I think you made the key point there, which is Trump, during the entire debate, even though he kept on bringing up the emails and Hunter Biden.
People are saying you're corrupt.
Yeah.
Everyone's saying you're corrupt.
He never made a charge.
Right.
The charge was, you're making money. You've made lots of money. You've made lots of money.
Yeah.
What, is it dirty money? Is it what? What's your charge? What is your precise charge? He was just vaguely hinting at impropriety without actually spelling
Which
it
is,
out.
I guess, the definition of a successful, we'll see how successful it is, but a smear, where you're inferring, based on the fact that most people still think that Hunter Biden probably didn't deserve that job. You know, he had the job because of his dad.
I think he probably didn't deserve
it. But they're stretching beyond that, and they're
Yeah.
saying that Joe Biden is somehow crooked. Joe Biden's not a rich man, unless, you know, he, like President Trump, we learnt this week, has got a bank account in China.
Yeah.
And that's where it's kind of like, again, a case of I know you are, but what am I, from President Trump, that he's again accusing people of doing things that he has clearly done himself.
And I should say, there is a certain necessity to Trump being vague because the story of Hunter Biden is extremely complicated. Every single day there's some new email, no one really knows what's going on. It's very, very smoky and hazy. And so if he tried to go into detail, he's not a details guy, Trump, but if he tried to go into detail, no one would get it anyway.
Yeah.
So actually, by necessity, he needs to go like that, but I think it makes the attack weak.
Yep.
Having said that, I do think in that clip, he drew a little bit of blood from Joe Biden in that he drew the quote, "I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever." What that says to me is red rag to a bull for a journalist.
Yeah.
Someone is going to find a penny from a foreign source and it's, Joe Biden, you're lying. What are you hiding? What have you got to hide? Whenever you get very specific like
Yes.
that, it is really, it just lets the media in. And
The danger of making a definitive statement, which is why politicians try and avoid them and then get accused of waffling and using political language.
And so that's one example where I feel like Biden might regret that quote later on.
Yeah, all right. What else caught your eye?
Yeah, what was interesting to me actually was off the back of all this Hunter Biden stuff. Well, half the debate was Trump injecting Hunter Biden and stuff. It was Joe Biden tried a sensible, intelligent, 101 politician response to all this Hunter Biden stuff, which is, let's stop talking about us. Let's talk about you, looking right down the barrel of the camera.
Down the barrel again.
He tried it, and Trump was ready, and he nailed him on it.
There's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making. In the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont, they're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want to talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, just
I do
for
want
1
to turn
second,
to
please.
10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about
I'm not
North
a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I got
President
elected.
Let's
get off the subject of China. Let's talk around, sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk.
Well, I'm not sure that he's right there, because I think the reason why some politicians do that and show that kind of empathy and focus on voters is that voters like to have politicians focus on their concerns. I think Trump's gotten that wrong there, even though it's a good little heckle. I don't actually think that's going to work with voters at all.
Okay, this is one where we disagree. I disagree. I think that's going to work, well, to the extent any of this works. I think it will work because I think Joe Biden was notably inauthentic there with the made-up people, the weird examples he gave. It sounded like it was a memorised statement.
Yep.
And I felt,
a bit reminiscent of Chris Christie smacking down Marco Rubio in the primary debate in 2016, when he kind of he basically sort of said, you know, there you go again.
Yeah.
There's that line you keep using, that tactic you keep using.
And it was always Trump's calling card was, I'm the disruptor. I'm busting all that bullshit. The problem is, though, he's not challenger Trump anymore.
Exactly.
He's incumbent Trump.
Yeah.
And he's got his own bullshit now.
Yeah.
And so I think disruptor Trump, while it was welcome to see it again, I don't think it has the same cachet anymore.
The President of the United States can't really argue that he is not a politician.
Yeah.
That is quite a reach. And, of course, the debate started off today, Chaz, with a section that clearly President Trump wanted to move on from as quickly as he possibly could. And that's all centred around his handling of the coronavirus. Some familiar talking points.
Yeah.
Did we learn anything new? Was any blood drawn there?
I feel like one thing I don't understand with this is that Trump never really goes into much detail with Operation Warp Speed, which is, I feel, the only thing he absolutely nailed during coronavirus. He's made so many mistakes, but the one thing he can always say is there's never been a vaccine history in less than 4 years. We're going to have one in less than a year because of me, because I busted heads together. You know, he can take credit for that, and he never does. He mentions vaccines, but he never actually specifically takes.
It's almost as though because the vaccines aren't going to be available by November the 3rd, it's like, that's no good to me.
It's very strange. But the thing which I noted was I felt like Joe Biden, every time he talks about COVID, he's quite unfair in that he has a bob both ways on shutdowns. He says, oh, yeah, we should listen to scientists. If we need to shut down, we need to shut down. But the fact that he shut down is the reason why the economy's busted. Well, obviously, if Joe Biden was in the same position, they would have shut down as well. Because everyone was saying you have to shut down at that point in time. Yeah. I feel like he was particularly unfair today. The quote I wrote down was, I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. We shut the country down because of Trump's ineptitude. That is just not true. Every single country in the world, bar Sweden, shut down.
But what Biden's been arguing is that Trump acted too late. Trump was focusing on the travel ban when he should have been looking at shutting down the society a couple of weeks earlier. And he keeps citing the studies that show we would have saved 50,000 lives had we gone 10 days earlier.
And that's fair. That's fair. I'm not saying he's beyond criticism, that's for sure. I'm just saying I feel like Joe Biden is having a bet each way, where when he wants to hit Trump for the economy, he says, it's because you shut things down. Yeah. And when he wants to say Trump's not taken seriously enough, he's saying, but you'd never shut down. And I feel like I know that's the privilege of being a challenger, but I think it's a bit cheap.
Yeah, bob both ways. You're right. Look, one of the other more substantive sections of this debate, and certainly one which casts the differences in the two men's personalities, approaches and policies into the sharpest of focus, was when they were asked about reports this week that more than 500 asylum seeker children remain in the US, but authorities are unable to locate their parents, who in most cases were deported back to their country of origin in South and Central America. Take a look.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents.
He had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America.
Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe. They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay, President Trump.
But we don't have to worry about it because they terminated it, so we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Let's move on to the next
and you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
Now, what he was saying about the 1% only turn up to the court, completely untrue. I don't have the numbers on me at this moment. We just came back from watching the debate. But from memory, it's between 70 and 80% go back to court. And they're not all rapists and murderers.
Right, he didn't even say, and I'm sure some of them are very fine people. In 2015, he at least said there were some fine people amongst the murderers and the rapists.
Yeah, that is just obviously absurd. And yeah, as I said, the vast majority, not I shouldn't say vast majority, the majority of them did return to court when they had this in the past.
Yeah. Now, the particular policy that Joe Biden is talking about there was it was a pilot program that preceded the announced program in 2018, which was to an extent modelled on Australian border protection policies, which made a big deal of the fact that they were separating children from their families because they thought this would be a deterrent to families coming across the border. So, of course, in response to that, you had some parents going, oh, I better just send the kids on without us, send them with child traffickers and so on.
Yeah. I was going to say that I actually felt that section then was actually the direct opposite of what I described before, when I thought Biden was rather inauthentically bringing up the people around the kitchen table and Trump called them on it.
Yes.
In that case, I thought that was one of the times Biden seemed authentically angry.
Yes.
There was nothing memorised about that speech. That was off the cuff and heartfelt, I felt, watching that.
Seemed that way.
Whereas by contrast, Trump was just doing all this, who built the cages, which has nothing to do with anything. That's the kind of thing that might work on a Fox News panel, but people knew that he had no answer and he was trying to change the topic. By the way, Obama built the cages, okay? Let's just put it out there. That's what he's trying to get at. Those cages existed under Obama. They were used differently under Obama.
Yeah.
But the fact is, it doesn't matter who built the cages. It matters who lost the children.
Yeah. And how long the children were in the
parents.
cages for, and then what happened to the children and their parents after they were taken out of the cages.
So I thought Trump came off as extremely inauthentic and like he didn't give a toss really. And I don't think it's going to last. I don't think in a week's time people will be talking about that. But I thought he lost a lot of points there.
Yeah. What about the attacks, though, on Joe Biden? And we've heard this again and again. He's not just a politician, but he was, 47 years in the Senate and 8 years in the White House and all that kind of stuff.
On the 8 years thing. I mean, that was probably the thing Trump said second most after the words Hunter Biden or emails. He kept on using this kind of anti-politician tack. I got an example here.
And we're
I
going to
just
move
asked
on
one
to climate
question.
change.
Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why, Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress.
He's right. It's because of Republican Congress. But nevertheless, Trump was definitely drilling the 8 years as vice president. Why didn't he do anything? Obviously, it's a bit unfair to say the vice president should push policy. Yeah. I also think, once again, like before, that works when you're a challenger. When you're an incumbent, you've got your own record to defend. I'll just say one more thing before we finish, and that is there was one more hanging curveball I thought Biden gave Trump, which might bite him over the next week, fracking.
Yeah.
Quote, I have never said I want to ban fracking. Show me the tape. The tape exists. We're going to be seeing that tape, I think, a lot over the next week, and I suspect we will in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, given the importance of Pennsylvania. But as for who won and lost this debate, the first scientific poll from Data for Progress gave the win to Joe Biden by 52 to 41, which, as we'll see later, is just about where the national polls are at right now, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Similar results as well from a group called US Politics Poll, although I don't know too much about them. Similar results, though. Fox News, it is promoting this News Nation poll. A rather different result, because they let anybody vote who wanted to, who happened to be on the Fox News Nation website, and they didn't weight it at all.
And CNN was 53-39 as well.
Yeah, all right. Let's get some more reaction for you now on the final debate from the Trump campaign's Matt Schlapp. He's also head of the conservative CPAC organisation, which has held a debate watch event in the state of Minnesota. Matt Schlapp, welcome to Planet America's Fireside Chat.
Great to be with you guys.
So we saw that debate. Who is that big, tall guy with the fake tan and the yellow hair on the left? That wasn't Donald Trump. Who was it?
Are you trying to tell me that you thought he did a really good job?
I guess that is what I'm inferring. At least it was a very different temperament. Did he take your advice at last?
What's interesting is that I think almost everybody's reaction to the first debate was the president was so feisty that he didn't give people a chance to hear from Joe Biden. And hearing from Joe Biden allows us all to be reminded that he is very deceptive about many things, like his desire to ban fossil fuels, the fact that he said he's never talked with his son Hunter on his business dealings, and also that somehow he's for all these reforms in America of the criminal justice system that he had 8 years to reform and never did anything. Matter of fact, he was the godfather of this bill, which locked up so many young African-American males. So I do think it was a good strategy to let Joe Biden talk.
That enough rope strategy, Matt, do you wish in retrospect that that had been the approach that he took in late September, that maybe the polls would be looking a little different now?
No, I don't think any of this has much impact on the polls. I think what is happening in American politics is it's very ossified, it's very fossilized. You have a very hardcore socialist Democratic Party, and you have Trump supporters, and it's very evenly split. And so it comes down in America, we elect presidents through the 50 states, and it comes down to these slender victories in these states. That's why the group I chair, CPAC, is in Minnesota, one of these battleground states where President Trump actually pulls out a narrow victory in Minnesota. He's going to get 4 more years.
The moderators and the debate structure and all the rest of it has been almost as big a story as the candidates so far.
Right.
Were you happy with the way that debate was conducted?
No, I'm really not. My belief in America, the media has become so partisan and so on the side of the Democrats that the moderators that they pick tend to just go after Trump the whole time. For instance, the moderator never challenged Joe Biden on any of his answers, but she constantly challenged Donald Trump on his answers. Now, in the media, they say, well, that's because Trump lies all the time. And of course, that's not true. And Joe Biden had some real whoppers in this debate tonight. For instance, when he said that he never said he wanted to make fracking illegal, and the Trump campaign put out 5 or 6 examples of Joe Biden saying he wants to make fracking and fossil fuels generally illegal. And then he ended up the debate saying, we're going to have no carbon emissions.
Matt, what would you say are the key issues that President Trump needs to hammer between now and November the 3rd? Is he wasting his time talking about Hunter Biden and laptops? Should he be hammering fossil fuels to win those votes in Pennsylvania and elsewhere?
No, it's right to, let's just say this. What Hunter Biden appears to have done is corrupt and criminal, and it should be fully explained before Election Day. I have no problem with that at all, and the president's right to push it if our media won't. But the key is the economy. Who can bring this economy back after this disaster of COVID and shutting down the economy? And Biden's economic policies, by every poll, are not popular, raising taxes, increasing regulations, making America less energy independent. So the economy is really the key question.
Matt, until about 3 weeks ago, the main knock on Joe Biden was that he was senile and confused. Do you feel after today he's answered those questions enough?
I think his performances in both the debates have overcome the expectations, which were very low, on his mental acuity. That being said, he is not running a real presidential race. I've been out on the road as a surrogate for President Trump. I have crowds myself that are 2 and 3 times bigger than what Joe Biden is able to get.
Matt, the question about the illegal immigrant kids being permanently separated from their parents, it seemed to me probably surprised Trump, because he was responding more about the cages, which wasn't really relevant to that particular question because those kids hadn't even been caged. Do you feel like Trump responded enough to that question?
Basically, the American people have made up their mind that illegal immigration, we've been way too lax, and we need to make sure we enforce the laws. And the only reason why kids were separated from parents is because parents thought it was the responsible thing to do to enter America illegally. And in that process, our laws and liberal judges have said that you can't send kids to prison because it's not a safe place for kids. So kids were separated so that they wouldn't go to prison. And Obama separated those kids, and George W. Bush separated those kids as well. It's because it's just the law of the land. And Obama bought those cages that those parents and kids were put in because it's simply following the law.
President Trump did describe some of those parents today, an echo of 2015, 2016, as rapists and murderers, and the ones who actually turn up after catch and release as being low IQ. Was that a lapse in his discipline, do you think?
No, I mean, this is one of the sad things, which is people literally think it's a good thing to bring kids in these very dangerous circumstances. And what we've seen at our southern border, one of the biggest problems is the child trafficking, the idea that you can bring kids over to really exploit them. And of course, the gangs and the criminals that are able to slip over the border, that has to end. And the American people have already made up their mind. Let me tell you, if the American election were to hinge on stopping illegal immigration, Donald Trump would win in a landslide. And it's because we've just been too lax as a country.
Matt Schlapp, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Well, so much for the debate. What about some other news this week? US intelligence officials, Chaz, have been warning about foreign election interference for months, if not years. And this week, right on cue, they confirmed it is happening. Here's the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, at a rather hastily scheduled press conference yesterday.
We have confirmed that some voter registration information has been obtained by Iran and separately by Russia. This data can be used by foreign actors to attempt to communicate false information to registered voters that they hope will cause confusion, sow chaos, and undermine your confidence in American democracy. To that end, we have already seen Iran sending spoofed emails designed to intimidate voters, incite social unrest, and damage President Trump.
OK, remember that last point. Here is the email, though. It purports to be from the white nationalist group, the Proud Boys, which you'll recall President Trump famously refused to condemn in the first debate, instead telling them to stand down and stand by. Well, the email says, "We are in possession of all your information. You are currently registered as a Democrat, and we know this because we have gained access into the entire voting infrastructure. You will vote for Trump on election day, or we will come after you. Change your party affiliation to Republican to let us know you received our message and will comply. We will know which candidate you voted for. I would take this seriously if I were you. Good luck." Smiley winky face. Well, that was nice. Now, remember, John Ratcliffe at the end there said it was designed to damage Donald Trump. Now, Chaz, I don't know about you, but it seems debatable, at least. Certainly the Iranians are not saying who they were trying to damage, who they were trying to help in all of that. It was targeting Democrats, not Republicans. Does this do more to discredit Trump or to dissuade Democrats?
Well, yeah, I would have thought you look at that email and it does seem as if it would discourage Democrats from voting. Like, not so much necessarily make them vote Republican, like no one's going to follow the instructions, but just scare them. And just go, oh, I don't want anything to do with that. But having said that, I did notice that the Lincoln Project, when the news story came out that this press conference was responding to about these emails, the Lincoln Project went pretty hard on those emails, going, oh, look what the Proud Boys are doing, look what these Republicans are doing. And so maybe there's some reverse psychology there going, this is going to become news if these emails get out, and then there will be a backlash against Republicans. Maybe that's the logic. I don't know.
And yet there's been, therefore, a backlash against the Lincoln Project for not questioning whether this email was really from the Proud Boys.
Oh, come
so, you know, it's, I mean, and I guess that goes to something that Ratcliffe said that I wouldn't disagree with, and that is when he said this is all about sowing chaos and division and undermining people's sense of faith in democracy, because whether it's Iran or Russia, whoever, that is ultimately objective number one of all this foreign election interference. It is anti-democratic, despotic countries meddling in America's democracy as a soft underbelly, America's social media, paid media and democracy, as a way of saying, well, America isn't such a great example for the rest of the world.
That rings true to me, I have to say.
And the other thing to remember, of course, is John Ratcliffe himself is not a master spy. He's a politician. He's a former Republican congressman who, when Donald Trump wanted to appoint him as the Director of National Intelligence last year, his fellow Republican senators said, we're worried about Ratcliffe in this job because he'll try and politicise the job.
And he has several times already.
And I would argue he has again by saying this was designed to damage Trump. That assertion that he just snuck in there at the end, I don't see how he can possibly make that.
Well, look, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with intelligence, so I'm not going to speculate, which is why I'm being careful here.
Sure.
But I will say that I did notice that Christopher Wray, who's the FBI professional, did not say that.
No, he most certainly did not. And certainly Ratcliffe's focus on the Iran part of this, rather than Russia, who he also talked about but didn't go into any of that kind of detail. That's interesting in light of today's news. That was yesterday. So today, the Associated Press revealed that US officials say that Russian hackers have targeted the networks of dozens of state and local governments in the United States in recent days, stealing data from at least 2 servers. Those officials say it is Russia, not Iran, that is their greatest concern. And once again, Russia is helping Donald Trump, describing a concerted effort to denigrate President Donald Trump's Democratic opponent, Joe Biden. So that too, when they say the real story here is Russia damaging Joe Biden, Ratcliffe yesterday saying, and Iran's damaging Trump. Seems a bit political.
It does a little. Although I should say that what the AP was referring to, the hacking and the interference that they were referring to was not necessarily trying to denigrate Joe Biden in this particular case. They were 2 separate things. They're saying Russia is trying to denigrate Joe Biden, but also there was this other stuff which they caught, which they're not sure what it was doing. It might be more about destroying people's faith in democracy, which seems to me to be the most likely outcome in most of these operations.
Yeah, and we should also say that what Iran was accused of doing was not a hack. It was simply accessing publicly available voter information, finding names of registered Democrats in this county in Florida, and then Googling them and finding their email addresses because they once made a submission to the local council to get a bit of pavement repaired or something. And then suddenly you are able to contact these people. So the question is, did they send this to tens of thousands of people and it'll make an impact, or did they send it to 3 people who contacted the news media and the Lincoln Project? That's, I guess, what we don't know. But what we do know is the same thing is happening that happened 4 years ago, and the media is trying to handle it differently. Social media is trying to shut down a lot of this stuff, but in the process, they're also attempting to shut down some stuff that may actually be worthy of some scrutiny, including the stuff about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and China and Ukraine and everything else. So it's all a hot mess.
It is, and all I would say is that we should try to, even when you feel a bit silly and gullible doing so, I feel like we should try and give each other a benefit of the doubt and not go at each other's throats and assume everyone has partisan negative motives in these kinds of things, because that is precisely what Russia wants.
Right.
Always remember that.
But they're also playing on the reality that there are partisan negative motives.
Yeah, no, I know.
This is an election.
I know.
And of course, this is not America at its best.
Yeah.
If America was at its best the day after 9/11, it's been at its worst since, 2015, 2008. When did things go wrong?
They've been wrong for a long time, John.
All right.
Now, look, talking about things that are wrong, we mentioned on Wednesday America was facing a 3rd wave of COVID, and it's because the daily cases have been going up, as you can see there. They're averaging over 60,000 cases a day, again, on the 7-day average, and the reason this has been making people nervous is because of this clever but complicated graphic I will now describe. This shows the growth in new daily cases since the June lull. And this line here shows the growth in COVID deaths 3 weeks later. You can see the trends match up pretty well. And it suggests that the deaths this week were due to take off again, which makes this graph of the daily deaths a little ominous, just starting to rise in the last 2 days. And while we're at it, the hospitalisations are on their way up again as well. Not enough to put pressure on the system as yet, but enough to take notice. By the way, when you hear about the 220,000 deaths due to COVID-19 so far, remember the excess deaths over the expected number is up by more. Up to October 3, there were 300,000 excess deaths so far this year. That was when there were 198,000 official COVID deaths. Now, some of those deaths, we should emphasise, might have had nothing to do with the COVID. In fact, they could have been suicides or drug abuse due to the lockdowns. But a fair few of them would definitely have been corona-related. There are a few differences between this wave and previous waves though. Firstly, this wave is much more widely spread than the previous two. There are 34 states at the moment that are being classified as experiencing uncontrolled spread. 27 states have experienced daily case records sometime during the month of October. These are different states to earlier in the year as well. The blue states started strong with a lot of COVID cases per capita, but the red states have long since passed the blue states for total cases per capita, and the swing states have passed them as well. So that is inconvenient at election time. It could also explain why in a poll earlier this month, 52% of people said the worst of the coronavirus pandemic was yet to come, whereas only 32% thought the worst was over. And in an AP poll last week, Trump scored 33% approval for his handling of the pandemic and 66% disapproval. Even for Republicans, only 70% approved of his handling of the crisis. Those aren't good numbers. One positive change, though, is that COVID is generally much less deadly than it was. In a recent study, people tracked 5,000 hospitalizations in New York between March and August. They adjusted for factors such as age and diabetes to rule out the chance that deaths were falling because younger, healthier people were being diagnosed. They still found death rates were falling across the board, even for older patients. On average, it went from 25% of patients in hospital dying in March to 7% of patients in hospital dying in August. That's presumably because doctors are getting better at treating COVID with better medicines at their disposal. Unfortunately, not vaccines. Pfizer was the only pharmaceutical company that still held out hope of getting a vaccine out before the election. Not anymore. They're now saying they won't even apply for an emergency authorization until the third week of November at least. And most analysts now say we're realistically looking at the start of 2021 for a vaccine. So, John, given all that, you'd think Trump would be wrapping himself up with the most popular asset he has in the COVID space, and that asset is Dr. Anthony Fauci, the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. But no. Last Sunday, Dr. Fauci went on 60 Minutes and said this.
Were you surprised that President Trump got sick?
Absolutely not. I was worried that he was going to get sick when I saw him in a completely precarious situation of crowded, no separation between people, and almost nobody wearing a mask. When I saw that on TV, I said, oh my goodness, nothing good can come out of that. That's got to be a problem. And then sure enough, it turned out to be a super spreader event.
Trump got a little upset about that, so the next day he said this on the conference call.
People are tired of hearing Fauci and all these idiots, these people that have gotten it wrong. Every time he goes on television, there's always a bomb, but there's a bigger bomb if you fire him. But Fauci's a disaster. I mean, this guy's, if I listened to him, we'd have 500,000 deaths.
And bizarrely, later that day, he said this.
You know, Biden wants to lock it down. He wants to listen to Dr. Fauci. He wants to listen to Dr. Fauci.
Boo! So he's criticizing Biden for listening to Trump's #1 coronavirus expert, to which Joe Biden replied, yes, I will. So, before you know it, Trump's literally accusing Biden of listening to the scientists, something that would usually be considered a positive. It's an interesting strategy, John.
It is a terrible strategy. I'm sure that people around Donald Trump who still are looking to find a way to win enough electoral college votes on November the 3rd to win him a second term would be tearing their hair out. It was bad enough that after his perceived mishandling of the whole pandemic, he then contracted it himself, opening him up to this line that he can't protect America, he can't even protect himself or his family or his staff. And now to be picking a fight with the guy who more than 2/3 of Americans say, we trust him with our life, and they say Donald Trump, not so much. Bad move. Now, let's have a look at what the polls are showing this week. With just a week and a half until the polls close, here's how the opinion polls are looking. Joe Biden is holding a steady 8-point lead in the Real Clear Politics average of national polls. It is still a closer, but similarly static race in the average of battleground state polls. Biden holding an average lead of just over 4 points this week. So if the election had been held this week, and to an extent, it was, because 40% of people have now voted, or at least 40% of the 2016 turnout have turned out already to vote, Biden would have won comfortably. 357 electoral college votes to President Trump's 181. 270 to win, so Biden would have won.
Yeah, well, I've been spying a different kind of enthusiasm measure, John. We're used to seeing huge crowds turning out for Trump rallies, of course. But I was looking at those fundraising figures that came out earlier this week. You mentioned them on Wednesday. I noticed that over the journey, Trump has spent 46 cents for every dollar that he's raised during his campaign, okay? But in the last quarter, he's had to spend 77 cents for every dollar raised. By contrast, Biden has been spending 18 cents for every dollar raised. He doesn't have to pump his small donors nearly as hard as Trump does. I thought that was interesting.
Very.
The other thing I saw that was interesting was a stray factoid that turned up in a piece about attack ads. It seems that when Republicans are attacking down-ballot Democrats, that is, House reps and Senate candidates, more Republicans are using Hillary Clinton in those attack ads today than Joe Biden, even though Hillary Clinton hasn't run for 4 years.
Yep.
So that tells me that Trump has not had much success making people hate Joe Biden.
It's a classic case of fighting the last war again this time. And he's dusting off the same playbook, of course, accusing Joe Biden of now being the most corrupt politician ever since the last time there was a corrupt politician, etc., etc. Look, with Joe Biden hunkered down in Delaware for most of this week, prepping for today's debate, he wheeled out the big gun, surrogate-wise, former President Barack Obama, campaigning this week in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it was vintage Obama when he let rip at Donald Trump at one of these drive-in rallies.
Donald Trump likes to claim he built this economy, but America created 1.5 million more jobs in the last 3 years of the Obama-Biden administration than in the first 3 years of the Trump-Pence administration. How you figure that? And that was before he could blame the pandemic. Now, he did inherit the longest streak of job growth in American history. But just like everything else he inherited, he messed it up.
And he offered this vision of a possible post-Trump future.
And with Joe and Kamala at the helm, you're not going to have to think about the crazy things they said every day. And that's worth a lot. You're not going to have to argue about them every day. It just won't be so exhausting. You might be able to have a Thanksgiving dinner without having an argument. You'll be able to go about your lives knowing that the president is not going to retweet conspiracy theories about secret cabals running the world or that Navy SEALs didn't actually kill bin Laden. Think about that. The president of the United States retweeted that. Imagine. What?
He's very good at that.
Yeah, he certainly does a good line in mocking disbelief. But of course, it was just such jabs at Donald Trump at that infamous 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner where Obama roasted Trump, who was in the audience, that got Trump riled up enough to run for president 4 years later. And, Barack Obama, interesting that he's wheeled out this late in the campaign. He was a lot more active on the stump for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Maybe that was a sign that she knew she was in a bit of trouble with a certain demographic group. So what did you read into the fact that suddenly, 12 days out, here's Barack?
Well, before I answer that question, I'll just say something on that last grab, because I think that is actually Trump's Achilles heel, that exact point. Like, I'm not the first person to make this point. They've been making it on Fox News all week, trying to get Trump to change his tack from the Hunter Biden stuff. But 56% of people, according to Gallup, feel they're better off than they were 4 years ago. 45% of people are supporting Donald Trump. There are 11% of people who think they are better off who aren't supporting Donald Trump. And that is why they are tired of all the crap. And I think Obama dealt with it very well there. But I think that is the thing which Donald Trump needs to try and pull people back from. He needs to convert that 11% who think they're better off under him, but they're tired of him and they're sick to death of the Trump show.
Yeah, and why would those people, after getting to that point after 5 years of the Trump show, suddenly turn around in the final week and a half and go, I'm going to miss that guy. Let's pull the lever for Trump again.
Well, it would have been better if he changed tax 6 months ago, but you know, better late than never.
3.5 years ago was the moment. His inaugural address was the moment.
Yeah, but to answer your question about Obama coming out, being wheeled out in 2 weeks to go, I think to me that's actually an alarm sign from the Biden campaign. Let me tell you what I'm talking about here. Hillary Clinton used Obama a lot because Obama is very charismatic and people thought, wow, what an asset. And then they found that maybe he turns out Republicans as much as he turns out Democrats. Possibly he turns out Republicans more than Democrats. They didn't use him so much in 2018. And I think that might be the reason why. So why are they trying him out now? I think it's because of the black vote, which we've talked about so often on this show, in particular the black male vote. Where did they trot them out? They trot them out in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where there was a terrible black result back in 2016 for Hillary Clinton. I wouldn't be surprised if their internal polling is telling them, we're not doing so well with the black males in Philadelphia. Pennsylvania is the critical state of this election. Yeah. Come on, Barack, we'll take the chance. Go for it. So
well,
that's why I think
it's something to understand with Pennsylvania as well. Strategists describe it as a state, it's very, very mixed between the city areas and the deep red rural areas. You've got Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and then in between it's basically Alabama. It is a deep conservative rural state in between these two massive urban centres. And if you just have enough black folks that stay at home in Philadelphia, then you lose because of all the white working class and rural voters that do come out in the middle of the state. And yeah, as you say, if this is a close election, it feels as though we're going to be following Pennsylvania just as 20 years ago we were following Florida. This could be the one with the, if not the hanging chads, but the funny envelopes and the date stamps and everything else. Well, while President Trump's outreach to black and Latino voters as well has been very evident in this campaign, really starting at the Republican National Convention back in late August, one of the speakers given a prominent slot there was Georgia State Representative Vernon Jones, a Democrat who has now endorsed Donald Trump, a Republican. Vernon Jones, welcome to Planet America's Fireside Chat.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us, a lot of us saw you at the RNC earlier this year advocating for President Trump's re-election. Why are you supporting Donald Trump? A little unusual for a Democrat?
Well, you know, I'm an independent thinker. I put my country, I should say, before my party. And this president has really brought about results. That's the number one reason why myself and many others are supporting him. He's literally done more than 47 months than both Democrats and Republicans probably have in the past 47 years. He gets the job done.
We've heard this claim that President Trump has said, I've probably been the best president for African Americans since Abe Lincoln. Some people have scoffed at that a little bit, but specifically for African American voters, and he is winning over increasing numbers of them from a small base. What has he done that you would say warrants particularly black voters this year?
Well, if you remember, when he was campaigning back in 2016, he went to a black church and he said, look, what do you have to lose for voting for me? Democrats have been there. You've been supporting them for the past 50 years. And what do you have to show for it? Give me a chance. And many of us gave him a chance. And you know what? He has done more for African Americans going back to Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln turned the slaves loose, but Donald Trump, his plan and what he's done, he's freed African Americans. He created jobs for them, helped them start small businesses. I'm a proud graduate of historical black college. And with him supporting those 48 universities, not only did he increase the funding by 14%, but he wrote it into law. That has never been done going back to George Washington. And more importantly, for many African Americans, Joe Biden wrote the crime bill that incarcerated masses of black people. And you know what? He destroyed black families. And this president came back where he looked at the criminal justice system. He saw what the crime bill did. In many cases, the crime did not match the fine, or I should say the crime didn't match the time. And with the First Step Act, he has released thousands of African Americans.
Mr. Jones, you mentioned Trump's stewardship of the economy. Now, we just played a clip from Obama from 2 days ago saying America created 1.5 million more jobs in the last 3 years of the Obama administration than in the first 3 years of the Trump administration. That's before the pandemic. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, President Obama was in office 8 years. So you give Donald Trump 8 years to make a comparison there. Donald Trump came in as the country started to stabilize. But when he introduced that tax credit, that tax cut, that immediately gave more people take home pay in their paychecks. At the same time, it created masses of jobs because the business community started investing their money, because before that, many of them had it in offshore accounts where they were not getting a rate of return. They're being taxed too much. But now they've come back, they've expanded businesses, they've created jobs. And to tell you that President Trump has done so well in the midst of this pandemic crisis, you've seen over the past couple of months, job growth. That's incredible, especially when people are told by many Democrats and Democratic-run states to stay home and don't go to work. And in Republican states, you normally see where those states are providing more balance of opening the government or opening businesses and also listening to the healthcare professionals, but striking a balance. And, let's look at President Obama. President Obama meant a lot to Black people and to African Americans, but he didn't do anything for them.
Mr. Jones, I understand a week or so ago you were at a Trump rally down in Georgia. Did I hear right that you got into a bit of crowd surfing at the end there?
Well, let me tell you, it wasn't about me crowd surfing. This was about me believing in Donald Trump. And I also believe in those people that I dived into. And by the way, they were mostly white, but I can tell you, they caught me and they protected me. And that's a demonstration that Black Lives Matter.
But some people, of course, criticise that fact despite the fact that it appeared like great fun, that it was also maybe a very dangerous thing for you and those other folks to be doing in the middle of a COVID pandemic.
And that's what's ironic. They never criticized those rioters who were yelling and screaming, not wearing face masks, throwing rocks, killing individuals, including Black people, burning Black businesses, when you shoot a 1-year-old baby girl that's in a stroller, Black baby girl in New York, in Atlanta, they shot and killed an 8-year-old. Look at how many Black businesses have been destroyed and Black communities have been destroyed as a result of Antifa and Black Lives Matter, which all Black lives do not matter to Black Lives Matter. As a matter of fact, Black Lives Matter, they've sought out to destroy the nucleus of the Black family, the straight Black male.
So can I understand correctly? So you're sort of saying that there was, for you at least, there was something very reassuring about the fact that you were being physically supported by this mostly white crowd, and that was kind of worth the risk that you were taking in terms of infection, that it was sort of an uplifting moment, sort of literally?
Let me tell you, President Donald Trump put his life on the line fighting for us, for the American people, all of us, Black, white, brown, yellow, you name it. And this president was infected with the virus himself, because he was willing to do what Joe Biden wouldn't do. We call him Groundhog Joe, just stay in his basement until it's safe, and then he comes out like a groundhog. So if this president can put himself in harm's way and get infected by this virus, working and helping the American people, then you know what? That's a small sacrifice that I made because I believe in him and I want to help him get reelected.
One more from me, Mr. Jones. I can't help noticing that you also supported the last incumbent Republican president, George W. Bush, in 2004. From memory, do you remember why you supported him?
Yeah, because he was strong on defense. He was strong on security. When he sent that signal around to the Middle East for what they did with 911, George Bush took the fight to them. I can appreciate that. But, I like the fact that he was driven by faith. He was very involved with the faith-based community, realizing that many people trust their churches more than they trust the federal government. So he welcomed them in as a partner. George Bush is a good man, but I'm an independent thinker. I call balls and strikes on both sides. I supported Obama the first time he ran, but the second time I saw where Obama was a fairy tale. Obama was not there for African Americans. He didn't identify with African Americans. Obama was there for the Ivy League elite and his friends. And he didn't understand rural America. He didn't understand the inner cities. He didn't understand the true plight of African Americans. Even since he left office, he didn't go back to Chicago and try to work on stopping the violence with 60, 70 people getting killed per weekend, including mostly Black children. No, he left to go to Martha's Vineyard. That tells you where his commitment is.
Well, Vernon Jones, we really appreciate your perspectives and your insights. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
And that's all the time we have for this Fireside Chat. We'll be back with Planet America next Wednesday night, 9:30 p.m. on ABC TV. And the Wednesday after that, of course, our 2-hour Planet America Election Night Spectacular. It's going to be a pretty big night, Chaz. You got a podcast for us?
Yes, a big night tonight when everyone tunes into the Pep podcast, fresh and piping hot.
Good night.
See you there. Bye.